My name is Will Smith. I'm a technical solutions consultant with Intellius. So I've worked with Infor, various Infor products for a number of years. Today, we're going to be focusing specifically on Infor talent acquisition, which I've helped implement a number of times in the past, helped build interfaces for this. I've helped build extensions, so very familiar with talent acquisition. And specifically today, we're going to be talking about an expedited workflow, or a way to get offers out really, really quickly, which we're calling the same-day offer workflow. So we'll get into a little bit further on in the presentation. We'll get into kind of what that means, what the value add is there, what I'm talking about when I say same-day offer. But before we get into all of that, I do just want to go ahead and tell you all a little bit about us, about who we are as a company and what we do as Intellius, for those of you who may be less familiar. So we are a services and software company. We're based out of Dallas, Texas, established back in 1999. We are an Infor Alliance partner, so we work very, very closely with Infor, with their services team. We have experience with all sorts of different Infor products and implementations. We've got software offerings and extensions to add on to both Infor Lawson and some of the newer Cloud Suite offerings. And then we've got a wide array of consulting services. So anything from Infor Lawson technical services and upgrades, server upgrades for on-premise and things like that, all the way to Infor Cloud services, application consulting, basically anything and everything in Cloud Suite or in the Infor world that you could imagine. So definitely always feel free to reach out to us with any questions about what you hear in the presentation today, or anything else Infor related. We're always happy to take a look or to jump in and help out with that. And I will provide some contact information for myself at the end of this presentation as well. So with that little kind of preamble out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda for today. So what I want to talk about here, first is kind of the value of the same-day offer workflow. What is it? What value does it add? Why is this a concept that I'm even bringing up to you all? Then we'll take a look at using several hiring workflows in conjunction. So to kind of avoid being limited by the simplicity or the complexity of a given workflow, we'll talk about how you can use multiple and kind of assign those to different positions. We'll do a quick kind of workflow comparison between a more complex, maybe more standard workflow, and then an example of a same-day offer workflow. We'll take a quick look at a same-day offer workflow and what that might look like in the system, kind of a quick demo. And then at the end, I'll cover some tips for getting started with this, how you might be able to start thinking about implementing this at your own organization, how you can get in contact with us to have us help out with that, those types of things. And then I will leave some time for questions at the end here as well. So first up, what am I talking about here? What is a same-day offer workflow, and what is the value of that? So just to kind of define this at a high level, the basic premise here is that many organizations of all types, of all varieties, have some sort of entry-level position or positions where the turnover is very high, right? People might be coming into and out of those positions very frequently. Maybe there's many openings in that position to be filled. So maybe this is a position where you have openings at every organization unit. You've always got a requisition open. You're always hiring people for this position. It's a critical position that needs to be filled, and you've got a ton of openings. Typically, this type of position would also have a low experience threshold. So, not a lot of prior experience in that specific field required, not a lot of certification or kind of pre-training required. This is a type of position where training can really happen on the job for the most part. You can really, as long as somebody's a good candidate and they're willing to learn and they're willing to get in there and pick things up, you can really train them, kind of from scratch. And then these types of positions also often have a very quick and competitive talent pool, right? You might have I'll use a teller, a bank teller, as an example a lot throughout today. But we could also think of this as being, a front of house staff or somebody at a front desk at a hotel, maybe a line cook, maybe an overnight delivery driver, these types of things, where maybe you have someone who's out here applying for, 15 different positions. Maybe some of them are at other companies, maybe they're applying for multiple positions within your organization. But kind of this pain point we've been hearing from our customers is, hey, we've been using our standard workflow. We implemented Infor talent acquisition and we set up one hiring workflow, and we've been using that. And for these types of positions, we're missing out on talent because maybe our standard workflow has, 3 rounds of interviews or, 30 steps in it. And by the time we have our first interview with these candidates, and then we take a week to get them through the next steps in our selection process and, extend an invite for a second interview or extend an offer to them, maybe they've already taken another job because this type of position moves so quickly because they have so many, applications out there potentially. That was the feedback we were getting was, hey, we're missing applicants because we just can't get offers out to them fast enough. The turnover is just too quick and we can't keep up with it. And so that's where this idea came from. The idea is basically to build a really simple, really streamlined kind of bare bones hiring workflow within HR talent that we can use to just really move applicants through for certain positions really, really quickly, get offers out to them really, really quickly. In many cases, we can even have an offer to the candidate the same day they interview. That's where the name same day offer comes from. Maybe even by the time they're out to their car and drive home from the interview, maybe by the time they get home, they've got an offer waiting in their inbox. And we'll take a look at that a little bit later on. But that's basically the core concept and the main value add here is the idea that we can really streamline the process on the back end for recruiters or for hiring managers. We can really stream the process on the front end for our applicants, make the application for them very, very simple and quick, only gather necessary information, and we can get offers out as quickly as possible to make sure we're following up with these candidates, to make sure we're getting the best talent in these type of quick moving, high turnover talent pools. So let's take a look at how we can kind of leverage different workflows. Because one thing to consider, and I think this is where a lot of organizations get stuck, is we often design our hiring workflow for kind of the most complicated common denominator, I guess, right? Let's say we have a bank president position. I'll use the example of a bank a lot today because I'm talking about tellers as our example entry-level position. But let's say we have a bank president position. We might design our initial selection workflow at go live around that position or around our most complicated set of requirements. And then we might be kind of stuck with our positions that are a little bit more lightweight, where we don't need to collect as much information, where we don't need as many rounds of interviews. And so rather than kind of saying, well, we need to either really trim down the amount of verification we're doing for our bank presidents, or we need to make our tellers go through 3 rounds of interviews, what we can do is within the delivered talent acquisition application, we can actually assign different hiring workflows to different positions. So you can see here a screenshot of this teller example position I created in HR Talent, and attached to this position itself is a unique hiring workflow and a unique application process. And so the idea here is we could create an entirely different set of application questions and an entirely different set of hiring workflow steps for different types of positions, assign those at the position level and have them default through when we're creating a requisition. So we don't need to lock ourselves into, hey, we're creating this same day hiring workflow now all of our positions can only have one round of interviews. That's absolutely not the case. We can really tailor these, kind of by position type or position level. I've seen people have a ton of different workflows. You could even have, just one or two. But that's the idea here, is that we would leverage the same day offer workflow, not as our only workflow, but as kind of an additional supplementary workflow that we only use for certain positions. Only other thing I wanted to call out here is that we can override a workflow when creating a requisition. So let's say we have a position that normally we have a few more rounds of interviews, and it takes a little longer to fill, but for whatever reason, the situation we're in right now, we need someone in that position tomorrow. We could create a requisition and override the normal hiring workflow with our same day workflow, for example, and really expedite the hiring process for a position that's maybe normally a little bit more robust of a process. So let's take a look at a little workflow comparison. This is an example of a kind of maybe a default or standard selection workflow. And I would say this is an example that isn't necessarily even all that complex, right? You can see over here on the left, and it may be kind of small, but we'll get into our system demo in a little bit as well here, and you'll see these again. But you can see these are basically all different steps that the recruiter has to step through to get from, applied all the way down here to hire. That's quite a few steps, right? I think there's 28 in here. There's multiple rounds of interviews. There's an assessment that the employee needs to complete, or that the applicant needs to complete. And this can really, really slow down processing for these quick moving positions. Again, I've hit on that point a few times already, but if you're a recruiter and you interview someone, then you've got to go through all these extra steps to get them into pre-boarding. Maybe there's another round of interviews after you that you need to manually skip if you only have one selection workflow. So that can really, really slow things down. That can really delay getting the offer to the candidate. And again, maybe by the time we follow up with them, they've already accepted a different position. That's definitely something that is very possible. So let's take a look instead at this example same day offer workflow. So this one we can see is a little bit simpler, fewer steps. Basically the idea here, and again, we'll take a look at this together in the system, but the idea here is, an applicant comes in, they land in applied under review. Maybe there's a recruiter who takes a look at their resume and passes it on to the hiring manager inbox. The hiring manager gets a chance, to review their profile, to disposition them, or to go ahead and interview them. And if they interview them, then the next step in the same day offer process is to go ahead and prepare the offer and extend that. And again, we'll see together here in a second kind of how quick and easy that can be. But the idea here is, instead of manually skipping around steps or really having to manipulate this process or sort through all these complicated workflow steps, you can really just drop someone right into prepare offer, get them an offer with a few clicks, maybe even as they're on their way to their car after the interview. And then we'll talk a little bit about pre-boarding as well, but we can also, rely heavily on talent acquisition automations with these same day offer flows. So we can do things like, as soon as I accept the offer as a candidate, I'm assigned pre-boarding tasks. So we can really kind of speed up the process for both the candidate and the recruiter and simplify it. And B, just really minimize the amount of clicks or the amount of kind of manual intervention that needs to happen to get these people prepared, to get them through pre-boarding, and to get them ready to start. So let's go ahead and jump into my demo system here, and I'll walk us through a quick look at what a same day offer example might look like. Sorry, give me just a moment to get that pulled up here. Okay, so we can see this is kind of the what would be the back end or the recruiter view. But we can see basically I'm in here as a recruiter, and I can kind of compare my same day workflow to my more standard selection workflow. So we can see here I've got the same day workflow pulled up, and we'll come back to this in a second. But again, just to look at this again in the system like we did on the slides, we can see, you know, our steps are very, very limited, very bare bones here with the same day offer workflow. You know, basically this applied under review is kind of the first, I'll say real step, because when somebody completes a full application, they'll land here. As opposed to these other steps up here are kind of more, you know, they've partially completed an application, places to disposition. But really the first place that a recruiter or hiring manager is going to need to regularly review will be this applied under review step. Applicants will, you know, land here in this step as soon as they've submitted their application. A recruiter can come in here, you know, double click in, view these resumes, view everything else they've answered about kind of their own candidate profile, and they can basically make a decision right from in here about what they want to do with that candidate. So I could, you know, go ahead and review this, and maybe I decide, you know, first name, last name, he looks like a great candidate. Let's go ahead and get him over to John, the hiring manager. And so I can just drag him right into the hiring manager inbox step. We could set up an automation. So John, the hiring manager, gets an email as soon as I drag that into that step, and it says, hey, John, you've got a new applicant. He passed the initial screen from our recruiter. He's ready for your review. That hiring manager, the person looking to fill this position, could come in here, do the same thing, review the candidate, download their resume, do all that good stuff. And then maybe they like this candidate, or maybe they don't like this candidate. They can go ahead and just disposition him easily by dragging him into that step. We could set up an automation so disposition email goes out automatically, really saving the hiring manager kind of time and clicks here, so they can really sort through this inbox quickly. You know, drag into here, you're automatically dispositioning someone, an email is automatically going out, or drag into here. And again, we could have an email automatically go out that says, hey, candidate, hey, first name, last name, we'd like to invite you for an interview. Please follow this link to schedule it, or something like that. So we can drag him into that interview step, have an automation, send an email. And, you know, maybe we hear back from him, we go ahead and have an interview with him, and we think he's a good candidate. We can go ahead and, you know, after he walks out the door, or maybe it's a virtual interview after we hang up, we can go ahead and say, okay, great. We thought first name, last name was good. Imagine this is, you know, 5 minutes after the interview. With just a couple clicks, I can go ahead and get him an offer and get that out to him to review. So, you know, interview was good. I'll go ahead and take his record and just drag him down here to the prepare offer step. Once he's in this step, it's really simple. I just have to right click his record and go ahead and define an offer for him. This is the delivered offer form, but this is definitely something that can be simplified even further if desired. So we can make, you know, a kind of expedited version of this. But even this delivered version can be very simple, as you'll see me submit here. I can go ahead and just select a action reason of initial. This is the first offer we've made him. You'll see it defaults my candidate name in there for me. I'll go ahead and enter an effective date. And then I can select an offer letter template. These are kind of verbiage templates that are pre-staged in the system. So this would be part of setting up the same day offer workflow or the kind of TA setup here. But we can basically choose an offer letter that will default in, all this verbiage from our company. We can have variable replacement on these letters. So, we can default in all the appropriate verbiage for the letter, but have it pull in our candidate's name or our candidate's address or our own name, the recruiter name for the signature line. So all of that will happen automatically. We don't need to type out a letter. We don't need to go in and fill in fields. We just select a template and click submit. I believe I cannot submit here because I've already done it for this guy. So he's already got an offer defined when I was testing this earlier. But normally we would go ahead and submit here, and that would go ahead and define his offer. We could also, if we wanted to, go ahead and edit his offer letter here. So this is that template that I was talking about, where it'll kind of create all this verbiage for us automatically based on a preloaded template, and it'll fill in things like the unit you're joining, maybe your name, your address. But we can click in here and edit this as well if we want to maybe make a custom offer letter. Maybe we want to put at the top of this, hey, first name, really enjoyed talking with you earlier today, something like that. So you can edit that and save it here. And then once those things are defined, we can go ahead and just drag his record into the offer extended step. And I've set up an automation here on this same day offer workflow where basically as soon as I drag somebody into that offer extended step, behind the scenes, the system will go ahead and extend them an offer. So if we came in now as first name, last name into our external candidate profile, we would see, if I refresh here, that I can kind of view my list of all the jobs or all the requisitions I've applied to from my candidate profile. Right now, it's only the teller application. I'm able to go ahead and withdraw that application. I'm able to view the application information that I submitted. I can edit that and resubmit it if I would like to. And also, because my record was dragged into that extend offer step, I'm able to go ahead and just review my offer from right in here within my applicant portal. So as this applicant, I can click this review offer. I can download my offer letter from here and see all that verbiage that came from the template. This is all customizable. So this paragraph can say whatever your organization wants it to say. Same for this logo and text up here. All of this is completely customizable. And the person can come in, review all these details. Maybe the offer letter has some pay info in there that defaulted into those autofill variables. They can review all that. They can, reach out to you if they have questions, and then they can choose from here to go ahead and accept or decline the offer. They'll have to sign down here. So they'll sign in this little box, and then they can go ahead and click save. And that offer has been accepted. So now behind the scenes, maybe the hiring manager gets an email. Hey, first name, last name accepted their offer. Good news, go review it. Maybe the recruiter also gets an email. So those are types of automations we can set up. They've gone ahead and accepted this. So now they can see that back on their profile. And then the other thing that happened here, and we'll go take a look at this from the recruiter perspective as well, is that as soon as I accepted that offer, an automation on the back end fired within talent acquisition within that same day offer workflow. And this person was basically moved to a pre-boarding step, and they got assigned pre-boarding activities. So again, with that kind of example or that use case, I guess, in theory, somebody could come in for an interview, have an interview, it goes well. They leave. By the time they get home, they've got a email in their inbox that says, hey, you have an offer, go review it here. They follow it to this link. They review their offer. They think it looks good. They accept it. That same day they interviewed, they can start their pre-boarding activities. Again, obviously that will depend on obviously the follow-up on the recruiter end and the follow-up on the applicant's end. But I think that is a huge, huge value for a lot of these types of entry-level positions. Being able to not only get an offer out really, really rapidly and easily, I think that was 7 clicks or something from the recruiter end. So 5 minutes after the interview, you can have an offer out there. But you can also have that kind of automated built-in acceptance, and you can have that acceptance go ahead and trigger pre-boarding. And you can have this employee, maybe they interview on Wednesday, they're pre-boarded by Friday, and they're starting on Monday. And that a lot of that can happen automatically without anyone needing to intervene, which can be really, really powerful. So let's go back to our selection workflow here. And then the only other thing that I think I wanted to note with our example, so we've got first name, last name has been moved to the pre-boarding step here. I think the only other thing I wanted to note, I won't make you all sit through me going through all the pre-boarding steps, but if first name, last name had gone ahead and gone through all those pre-boarding activities and finished them, we can set up another automation so he's automatically moved to the hire step. For this type of flow, we could even, set up some sort of custom hire logic or action request logic that will do an immediate or automatic approve on a hire from the hire step for a same-day workflow. So that, again, we've got somebody who comes in on Wednesday, they interview, they get all their pre-boarding stuff done, Friday morning. All it takes is a generalist or somebody like that, somebody with the power to run the hire action, to come in here and just do a one-click hire. We can set that up to immediate approve, and then they are in the system, pretty much ready to go, that next Monday even, or potentially even faster. Yes, good question from Karen. Thank you for that. So Karen was asking, with the offer letter, you can add contingency language around passing background check and drug tests during the pre-boarding phase. Absolutely, we can do that. So we can have kind of variable paragraphs within that offer letter. We can have different offer letters for different positions or different workflows. We could have an offer letter that definitely includes contingency language that you need to make it through all these pre-boarding. Here's your offer, but you need to make it through all these pre-boarding steps before you're technically hired. That's definitely something that could be included there. That's also absolutely something that could be included as part of the pre-boarding program itself. So we could come in here, and this first page, when I click pre-board, could say, in fact, I think this one even does say, you'll ask to provide some additional information and you may be scheduled for a drug test. So definitely language we can include here. We can include that in the offer letter, even at some point in the application if we wanted to. Good question. Let's jump back to our PowerPoint here. The last thing that I wanted to talk about for today are some basic tips on kind of getting started, or how you all might be able to start using this, this concept within your own organization. So I would say definitely start simple, right? And iterate. This is something that, maybe you use for a position, you hire a few people, you see how it goes, and you iterate on it. Build a very, very simple flow first, test it, maybe don't include any automations at first, have it be all manual, and then iterate on it. Start implementing those automations, start bringing in the place where they're getting assigned pre-boarding automatically. I think that makes this a much less daunting task to take on. Really building out a workflow with only a handful of steps at a base level can be very quick and easy. It's when you start getting into the, we need all these automations to fire, those complexities where it becomes a little more difficult. So I would say, start simple, implement on top of that, iterate on top of that. Another tip I would suggest is if you have an existing workflow in Infor talent acquisition, edit that. Start there and edit that instead of starting from scratch. So maybe take your existing single workflow that you use for every job, copy it and name it something like same day offer, and start chopping out steps that you don't need. So maybe in your normal process, you have 2 or 3 or 4 rounds of interviews, copy that and take out 3 of those rounds of interview steps. Maybe in your normal process, you have 4 levels of approval to define an offer. That might be a bit extreme, but you get the idea. Start taking out some of those approval steps and just have an immediate approve define offer or an immediate approve hire. That I think is often the best way to go about this rather than starting to build from scratch, because you can take what you do today, take that existing process, and say, okay, let's use this for our most entry level position. Let's take that as kind of a framework and use that mindset to chop out all the steps that are unnecessary in this workflow for this type of position. Another thing that I think is really, really important, most of what I touched on today had to do with the workflows themselves. So the actual steps behind the scenes that the recruiter is taking, maybe the amount of interviews involved. But I think it's also really important to review your application as well. So, one thing I've seen with customers who have implemented something like this is that not only do they have a same day offer workflow that has, a limited amount of steps, they also have a bare minimum application that the employee is filling out where, you're only asking maybe the 5 questions that you really, really need to know to screen people for this position. Maybe your default application, or maybe your application for a bank branch manager has 35 questions. If somebody's coming in to apply for a teller and they've already applied for 10 other positions that day, and they see 35 questions to answer, odds are they're going to move on, right? They'll move on to the next application. Whereas if we can limit the actual application that the employee is doing before they ever get to the interview phase or to the review phase, if we can limit that down to, 3 to 10 questions, that helps a ton. Just being able to, as a candidate, get in there and get through that application quickly, hear back quickly about an interview, hear back quickly after the interview. All of that stuff really makes a big impression on candidates. And we've heard that, in feedback from customers, both before using something like this and after using something like this, that the application rate is much higher, and also the kind of retention rate after starting an application is much higher. So you can actually see in Infor talent acquisition, how many people have started an application and stopped halfway through. And that is something that we have seen in practice, that, after shortening the workflow, after shortening the application and the amount of questions you have to answer, people are much, much more likely to get all the way through the process and not give up. So that's very critical. Another tip that I would recommend would be to use the external portal to test. So you saw me when I did my demo come in here as a demo user. I just called it first name, last name. I just used my Gmail to create this account. But use these external job boards, create yourself some tester accounts. If you're that recruiter, if you're that hiring manager, if you were that IS person, use these external links to create applications for yourself and go through that application process like an employee would. See what it's like. See how painful it is, right? If there's 30 questions on your application and you as a tester think that's a drag to get through all of that, then odds are your applicants are going to think the same, right? So do that from their end, see it from the recruiter end, step through the process, kind of going back and forth between now I'm the example candidate, now I'm the recruiter, or now I'm the hiring manager. and see how that works from both perspectives. Use that to kind of find places to simplify it. And then my final kind of tip or plug here is, definitely reach out to us for support. We've implemented things like this at customers. From what we've heard, it's been a great success. They've had a lot, a big uptick in application retention after implementing something like this. We've worked with talent acquisition extensively. We're always happy to take a quick look or answer some quick questions, or to put you in touch with some of our sales representatives for kind of a more formal support contract or something like that. So definitely never hesitate to reach out to us. My email is on this slide here, so feel free to screenshot that or write that down. Definitely feel free to reach out to me after this with any questions you have. If you start trying to build something like this out and you get a little stuck, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to take a look, to put you in touch with Chandra or someone else, to get some additional help from us. And yeah, with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up here. We've got about 20 minutes left, it looks like, for some questions, if you all have any. And just wanted to say before we get into those, thank you all very much for taking the time to be here today. Hopefully this was helpful for you all. And yeah, feel free to let me know if there are any questions.
Well, we do have a couple of questions here. The first one is, in which version can these fields be attributed in a position? Is this something available to both single and multi-tenant clients?
That is a very, very good question. I believe this is only at the Cloud Suite or multi-tenant level at the moment. It is certainly something we could look into configuring or kind of setting up on a single tenant level, but out of the box, being able to tie these to positions and kind of have these multiple workflows, we've mostly implemented at the multi-tenant Cloud Suite level. Good question.
Okay, thank you. And then we've got, can this concept be applied to a middle ground hiring process? So faster than normal, but not same day.
Yeah, another good question. Thank you. And yes, that is absolutely something that we could do. So kind of any, variety all the way between something that's like a 3-step same day offer, super simple process, all the way up to a 45-step hiring process for a physician or something like that. Those are all things that could be managed, and kind of anything on the scale in between, we could absolutely build out. So really good question. Definitely, you could have one workflow that is expedited, but maybe it's a same week offer instead of a same day offer. Kind of anything in that range is absolutely something you can do within TA.
All right. And then the last one I'm seeing is, in addition to the expedited workflow, is there an expedited application?
Yeah, another good question. So yes, basically that's that same concept that I talked about a little on this slide with review the application, where basically the idea is we can use not only the configurable hiring workflow within Infor TA, we can also use the configurable job application. And so we could have, a much shorter application or set of questions for certain positions, in the same way that we have a much shorter hiring process, fewer interviews and things like that. So I would absolutely recommend, if you are doing something like this where you have a same day hiring workflow, to also include something like a fast application, where you're kind of minimizing the amount of questions that the applicant has to answer before they are reviewed by the hiring manager. And again, that's just to help with that kind of application retention, to help kind of motivate people to get all the way through the application, and to not see a giant list of questions and decide, let's move on to the next position.
And then the last question is just, are we getting a recording for this WebEx? And yes, you will be getting that either tomorrow or first thing next week. We will have that out to you.
Yes, another good one. I will also mention on our website here, intellius.net, this webinar will be posted once that recording is completed. And we have many other webinars on various topics as well. So definitely always feel free to go take a look at that too. We've got, a bunch of different webinars and blog posts to look at there as well.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you all. If you have any questions that pop into your mind after the session, you can reach out to Will at his email here, or you can respond to the email where we send out the recording. So thanks so much for your time. Thank you, Will. And we look forward to talking with you all more. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.